Okay, hello everyone. Let's start our webinar about IT gatekeepers. My name is Evgeny Lozovan and I am test automation engineer. And today I'm going to talk about interviews and what and today I'm going to talk about sorry, about interviews and what could you expect on them. Could we expect them? So here's the plan for today. Let's talk about application on tests, modern application. Part two, let's talk about what's going on before you see any job description on any site. And part three, finally, let's talk about interview itself. So, part one, icebergs and applications. Guess what is the difference, or actually what is the similarity between icebergs and applications. So in modern applications, you see only 10% of its functionality. So the biggest part, the huge one, is somewhere there. It's hidden underwater on the hood. And as a tester, as a test engineer, you are expected to be able to dig into that stuff, to understand what's going on underneath, to understand what could be an issue, and actually to be able to investigate the things. Okay, so imagine you test your application, you did something, and there is a small blast on that iceberg. So what is happening? What's going on? So what is the reason for that? Of course, you could just drop a line to your developer saying something, okay, you know, on that application, something doesn't work, something is broken, so could you please fix it as soon as possible? But guess what? This is not what you expect, or what is expected from you. So what is expected that you go deeper and deeper and provide any evidence or artifacts to understand what the root cause of the issue. So getting closer to that. So you found a defect, you found some anomaly. And in rare cases, this is only about UI. So the issue itself is on UI side. In most cases, you could have some problems with your web services. You could have some network issues. That's quite often the case. So you could have some database anomalies, for example. I mean, broken data, some inconsistency, something like that. So integration issues. Nowadays, applications, they are not alone. So most likely they are integrated with some other applications, some other systems, with third-party systems. And if something wrong with integration, that could be visible on your UI as some issue. So of course you could have broken environments. That's totally fine. That's kind of for a reason your environment could be broken. And so on and so on and so on. There could be a lot of any other issues, and you should be able to find the root cause. You should be able to provide evidences, provide any artifacts which could be used by your developers to fix the issue, to narrow down the issue and fix it. So you should define what the issue, provide evidence, and guess what's next? It's not enough just to find and rest. No, you should share that information with other guys. And what are them? I mean, what are they? Who are all those guys? So you're not alone on the iceberg. There is a whole team there, and the team means that there are developers, there are DevOps, there are analysts, there are business people, there could be a customer, for example, on your team. So, and you should communicate your findings to those people. And guess what? Different people talk different language, speak the different language, and for each particular person, you should use a proper language to communicate your findings. So, by the end of the day, you should be an expert in application structure. You should understand what is the typical structure of an application, what are the typical subsystems, dependencies, what could you expect under the hood. So since on any real size project you have many different subsystems, you have quite a lot of different documentations, and you should be able to read and quickly understand and analyze, of course, the documentation. And actually that I'm talking about any kind of documentation. For example, requirements, business requirements, or some technical requirements, user stories, some I don't even notes, like customer notes. So, and the next thing here, you should be a good communicator, meaning that read properly, write clearly, listen thoroughly, and speak proper language to each particular person. So that was about part one. Now let's move to part two, about what is going on before you see any position available on the site. So here's an application, an iceberg, our beloved iceberg, and here's some tough guys, let's call them IT gatekeepers, and that could be me, actually. So as a test engineer, I like my application. I would like that application to be the best one, as perfect as possible, and I believe that only good engineers could provide good application. So good testers good testers mean good application. So, and imagine at some point there's a need to to extend the team, to add more people, to add more engineers to that team. As a gatekeepers, we need to compose a set of requirements to that new person, some technical requirements, and then we just pass that list to HRs, and their job to to prettify the description, to make it more human readable, to add some their magic HR wording there, and post that application to some to some site. Okay, here's an example of such a job description. This is a position for a manual tester, for manual test engineer, entry level one. And let's go through it option by option. So point one in the list of your responsibilities. So perform manual testing for web-based apps. Manual testing means that there would be no any automation. So everything should be done manually. The whole testing should be done in a manual manner. Web-based application means that, of course, it's web-based. That's clear. And but apart of that, you should be familiar with DOM, domain object model. You should be familiar with the REST or SOAP APIs. You should be familiar with databases and SQL. So you should be able to query those databases and get the data there, at least. So, and you should be familiar with integration principles. As it was said, nowadays applications most likely are not alone in the world. So they integrated with some other parties, with third-party systems. And you should be familiar with basic principles of such integration. Okay. Next responsibility: manual test websites, mobile apps, and other device-driven software using exploratory testing techniques. A lot of words here. But websites, mobile apps, and other device-driven software, I would say that means they have different teams, like at least 3 or 4 teams. One team for website, another team for mobile apps, for Android, and one more team for Apple, for example. And there are options here. So it could be that each team has its own sub-team of testers, of test engineers, or like testing team is kind of shared between developers team, between all 3 kind of applications. So kind of it's up to the company to decide how to organize their process. So exploratory testing techniques simply mean that sometimes there is no strict plan on testing, there is no strict test cases, there's just some notes on how and what to check, and just mean that you should be familiar with what exploratory testing is. But believe me, there is nothing that special in exploratory testing, but sounds very, very, you know, academic, in academic way, I would say. So take participation in improving, creating, maintaining test cases and test runs. So test cases means that you should design your test cases using whatever test design techniques applicable. Creating, maintaining test cases, that's again, you should design, I mean, create, it means create, and maintain, it means that from time to time your application is getting updated and some test cases become obsolete or outdated, and you should update them properly. Test runs, you should execute your tests. Sorry, somebody, probably you, it could be you, defined what is a set of test cases to be executed on each particular build, and you should be able to execute those tests and report any anomalies found, any issues found, and track those defects. By tracking, they mean that, for example, you found an issue, you created a defect, you reported it, and at some point, likely, that defect was fixed by your developer, and this is time for you to verify the fix, to ensure that it actually fixed the issue, it actually fixed it, and there are no new issues. Okay. Document means that you should be able to work with testing documentation. Mainly this for a junior engineer, it's mainly about reporting defects. Collaborate with a team, products, analysts, developers, infrastructure, and business on related testing activities. Okay, so basically it means you should talk to those people, to different people. And since we are talking about some international team, you should use your English to talk to those people. Okay, here, the next slide. Here we have a similar job description, but this time it's about test automation position, just entry-level test automation position. And I would say that the biggest difference between this one and the previous one, this line about proficiency in current industry programming languages such as Java, C#, Python, Perl, Visual Basic Script, and etc. So this is the biggest difference between this position and the previous one. So as a test automation engineer, you should be able to do some programming. And the rest of the items here is quite close to what we have on the previous slide, because because as a test automation engineer, you should be able to test the application. You should understand testing as well. But I would not hear that in case of test automation, your level of knowledge of underlying technologies should be deeper comparing to manual case. So let's get back to the list of languages here. So now here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. Languages listed, and for me it means that those guys, I mean, guys who posted this job description, they don't really understand what language to use. Because usually on a test automation project, you have one or well, maximum two languages, saying Python and Kotlin. And here they have 5, so I would say that they probably don't very know how to do the test automation, but this is just enough. Okay, so to sum up, some technical people understand that they need a new person on their team, and they compose a set of technical requirements for the position. After that, those requirements, they are somehow processed or prettified by HRs. After that, the results should be double checked by technical guys, because, well, you know, sometimes HRs, they don't really understand the technical language. So just double check what actually is going to be posted. And if everything is fine, the job description goes to some site, for example, Indeed, Glassdoor, TopTal, or Hunter, whatever. So, and at some moment, at some point of time, you just see that application, you apply to it, and luckily you get an invitation to an interview. So part 3, let's talk about interview itself. What could you expect there? Well, at the very beginning, most likely your interviewers will introduce themselves. For example, I'm your interviewer. I could say, okay, hello, my name is Evgeny. I'm a QA lead in this very company, and today with me, my colleague Sasha, and who is also a test lead on the project, and we are going to be your interviewers today. So please tell us about yourself something. So, like, this is a warm up part, and this is a good chance for you to, you know, to make your first impression, to describe your like strengths, to describe the best of you. Of course, you should name yourself, introduce yourself, but as I said, this is just a warm-up part. But it's very important. So probably your interviewers will have some additional questions about your interaction, your experience, something like that. So you just to talk to them. So after that, it's time for technical questions and some tasks. So as a tester, you should expect questions about test design, but not only questions, because questions, like, it sounds like theory only, but we are not very interested in theory. We need your practical skills, especially if you're a junior engineer. So most likely you will be asked to design some tests. So something like, here's a set of requirements, like here's a form, or here's a web page, and here is like some numeric field there, and that field could take numbers from 0 to 12, and please design test cases, and please use any test design technique applicable, something like that. Of course, this is a very simple task, but just to give you some idea. The next item here, software development life cycle. This is very important, especially for a junior engineer, to understand when testing starts, when testing should be finished, what is the place for testing in modern software development life cycle. So expect questions about that. Documentation, how to report like what is the testing documentation, how to report your defects, what is the life cycle of your defects or bugs. Questions like that are quite good for an interview. So more technical questions about SQL, about databases, APIs like REST or SOAP, client-server architecture, networks, Linux. This could be the case. I mean, it's not 100% sure that you will get questions like that, but that's quite normal to be asked about these things. So Linux, don't be surprised by Linux. Even if your workstation runs on Windows, it doesn't mean anything, because most likely your servers they run on Linux or some Unix-based system, and from time to time you need to do the investigation, as it was said previously, and you need to get there to those servers, and most likely you have only a command line there, and you should be able to use some command line tools, command line commands to to find logs, to copy those logs to your machine, for example, to I don't know, to filter the content of log file, and to execute some script on server side. So Linux is quite good for a tester. So testing tools like Jira, well, Jira is not like 100% testing tool, but still Jira is a tool to track task defects, requirements, etc. And it's very popular in modern world, so you should be familiar with with a tool like that. Some special testing tool like Qtest, for example, so-called test management tools. Of course, if you're talking about test automation position, expect questions about programming, something like what is object-oriented programming, what are the design patterns. I mean, what does it mean, design pattern? Which design patterns should be used in test automation? How to use tools like Selenium? Which tools to use to test some web service? Moreover, here, as a test automation engineer, you could be, and basically you should be asked to do some coding, because test automation is not only about testing, but it's about programming, about coding as well. So expect to be asked to provide some code, like real-time coding session. Okay, so probably at the end of your interview, your interviewers will tell you about the project and the company, and just some common things about it. Don't be surprised by this part. Don't expect too much of it, because it's just a part of the story. It doesn't mean that you pass the interview. Even if you fail, your interviewers will tell you about the company and project. So as I say, don't expect a lot of when you hear when they start to tell you about the company. So this was about the interview itself. What about English? So again, we're talking about international team, and there are two main options here. You talk to leads only, so just a minimum set of people, and in this case, probably your English level could be not that high. So most likely you will mostly need to read documentation and to write some predefined emails or reports. And another option here, you could communicate to everybody on your team, and this basically means that your English level should be quite high, something like upper intermediate. So you should be able to talk to people, and this is much harder than just write emails. Getting back to your interview, even if your interviewers speak your native language, and the whole interview goes in your native language, at some point your interviewers could switch to English, just to check your level of English, and so don't be surprised by that. or you could have the whole interview in English. So again, this is fine. Okay. Probably if you're a beginner and you don't have any previous testing experience or previous testing job, you just graduated from a course, one of the most obvious questions to you would be, why did you decide to be a tester? And it could be quite hard to answer that question, but still. So first thing, don't provide any social significant answers. So of course, if you start talking about disabled people, some senior people, helping them, etc., this is fine. You are a good person. That's very good for you. So I'm happy that you're such a good person. But what is the relation between this and this particular position and this software testing job? So please don't provide such answers. Okay, some people answer in a manner like, well, I'm not that clever nowadays at this point, and but I would like to be a developer, but I think the testing is quite simple, and I could join your company as a tester, and in a few years switch to developers. Okay, this is your position, this is your vision, that's fine. But for me as an interviewer, this means just that I probably don't want to work with. I wouldn't would like to work with such a person, because that person means he's simply not interested in the position, in the job itself. So why should I work with that person? Okay, I want money answer. Fair enough, but again, what is the relation between this and testing? I would like my application to be as perfect as possible. So, and the answer is like, I want more money. Just this is a sign for me that that person is not very interested in testing itself, in quality itself. So, and probably okay, what's the reason for me to work with such person? Okay. But how to answer, basically. So be honest first things, and try to show how interested you in the position. Try to show that you are interested in testing, you're interested in investigating anomalies. You are interested in playing such a role of detective and things like that. Okay. Probably as a beginner, your CV is not that long, and here's a couple things to make that CV more visible and more acceptable. So please highlight any testing experience, even if it's not software testing, but just, for example, okay, I was proofreading some documentation, I was creating user instruction, and I was checking it, and I was testing some hardware, whatever. Just some testing or checking things, ensuring that everything works fine. This is already some testing experience, so that's nice. Achievements. Okay, show us your achievements. For example, once I found a defect, I found an issue on some popular site, and I actually contacted their technical support. But technical support, they're not willing to fix the issue. So finally, I forced them, I convinced them, okay, to fix that issue. They did that, and now that application is even better than it was before. This is a good achievement for a tester. Okay, show us your ability to learn. But, writing a phrase like, I'm a fast learner is not enough. You'd better provide some link to, I don't know, a GitHub repository with your code if you're a test automation engineer, or provide a link to some certificate. So show how many you learn over past 3 or 6 months. That would be good. Okay, cover letter. This is a little trick here. So nowadays, cover letters are not very popular, and people just send CVs and not cover letters. And imagine that there is a a tired job in HR department, and she sees like hundreds of CVs each day, and each CV is very close to the previous one, so there is like tiny difference between them, and at some point she sees your CV with a cover letter. Okay, so that's interesting, so let's have a look at that CV. What is cover letter? You should write why do you want to join the company, why do you think you could join the company and bring value, why do you think you fit the position, what is your interest, what is your interest, what is your motivation. And the final things here, don't place any additional unrelated information, something like, okay, I like dogs, I like bicycle, I like hiking. That's fine, you are a good person, then we could talk about your hobbies when you join the company, but I don't really need, as an interviewer, I don't really need that information on your CV. So please don't put things like that there. Okay, so what do you need except like technical skills? As it was said previously, be interested in your job, in your testing job. So testing could be fun. I mean, it's kind of investigating the issues. It's not about criminal things, but software could be quite interesting to investigate. I mean, the root causes of some issues. You should get fun from learning, because in IT we are constantly learning. So it's about learning each day, because you know all the new technologies and new trends. You should be able to be a perfectionist in a good sense, like a boredom, because perfectionism, it's about ordering, and testing or making testing is about making your application better, and making better means putting things in order. So a perfectionist could be a good tester. You should be able to communicate to people, to different people, because there could be different people in your team, developers, DevOps, business analyst, and you should use proper language for each person. And of course, you have to be able to rest properly, because work-life balance is very important. And basically, the better you rest, the better you test. So this is it from my side today. We are going to have questions and answer session shortly, but if you still have questions after that session, here are some links for you. You could join the channels and ask your question there. So now it's time for questions and answers. I'm stopping the demonstration. And waiting for the questions. Okay, that's